Hi there, I'm Nu-Trix, and today we're talking about UVI latest banks of sound, the Percussion Factory. It runs in Falcon Soft Sampler or in their playback engine, which is a Workstation, if I'm not mistaken. It's different for me because we're talking percussion, not drum. So there's a lot of samples for a lot of these percussions I don't even know existed because I'm not into that usually. But what's interesting is this multiple sequencing happening at the same time. You have 8 different sounds. You can load banks of kits, if you want, of percussions. And for each of them, you can create a sequence that has a certain length. You can... Let's go. Well, I'll show you. I'm in my favorite DAW, Zen Beats from Roland. So I'm going to instrument. I'm going to go UVI here. It's going to show me just the UVI stuff. And basically, UVI, you have Workstation or you have Falcon. Now, let's just look into Workstation, what it looks like. Workstation is a playback device or player of samples or banks of sound from UVI, whereas Falcon is the flagship sampler where you can do your own stuff and create your own samples. You go here, double click for the browser, and here are all the sound banks, and I have Percussion Factory. That's what I want to have. So let's say I'm going to go World Tour, Africa, this one. So they tell you that it's supposed to play 114. That's where it was created for, but in the case of using it inside a DAW, it will sync to the DAW speed. So you see you've got these 8 different samples or sounds I'm going to play. Each are assigned to different keys here. You have it 2 ways. From C0 to C1, you have the separate sounds playing just one sound at a time. So this is really just to play back yourself real time with any type of sequence. So if you have already your percussion rhythms that you have, you want to use these rhythms with these sounds, you assign to these keys from C0 to C1. Now if you go from C2, now it's a loop. It's actually not a audio loop, it's a MIDI loop because it's actually a pattern playing, a sequencer playing. And now you see this sequencer has 4 steps, and the one the dotted that are full, this dot, and this dot are playing. This one does not play. So visually, right away, you see the different rhythm you have here. You can have something a little bit louder here. You hear that is more complex than what you see here, because some of these, I would say, slice of time, steps, can be sliced into more sub-steps. And C4 is every sequence playing all together, everything playing together. So the basic logic, you've seen that elsewhere, it's fine. You go and edit, and now you see each of them, you've got control over the volume, over the center, so you can pan it, you can just change to another sound, you can click here and you have a lot of sounds, and they're by type. Is it a hand drum? Is it friction? Like, are you rubbing it? Is it wood, metal, or shaken? So depending on the type of sound you want to hear or way of playing you want to feel, you go like that. Now with shaken, then you only have shaken samples, and they're by name. And for me, it doesn't really help me because I don't know what a Ganza is, or Castagnet, I know what it is, a Kexixi, I don't know what that is. Glass bottle, like, yeah, Jingle Bell, okay. Maracas, I know. Rain stick, I know. Shaker, yeah. So there's some of these, I just don't know what it is. Others I do. So I basically just play around until I find a sound that I find interesting. But let's go back here. You understand you can pick your sound. Then you have, this is 4 and percentage. Oh, what's 4? Look at the bottom here. You get steps. And that's decimate and rate and edit. Now steps is how many steps. So you see that this one only has 4 steps. If you bring that up, it will add more step, or activate if you want more steps. So go back to 4 in this case. So you can really create these polyrhythmic that does not, equal the same thing. Like one is a 3, one is a 4, one is a 5, and then it takes a lot of time before it goes back to the same one measure being the same, because all of these are moving in different loops if you want. You have the time signature. Is it running at, or the rate? Is it 1/8 of a note, 1/8 a triplet? And all the different options. So it also means that all of these different patterns playing at the same time are not exactly following the same speed if you want to. So it really creates that polyrhythmic interest in this. And the decimate is how much percentage it will disable some of the steps. So it will kind of mute some steps. 40% of them will be muted sometimes, 50% will be muted. 100% means not all of it, but by moving this, you're deciding how much this sequence is always the same or less of the same. So if you put it at 0, it's always going to be the one sequence you have here. If you put it to 100, it's going to be very little of that sequence sometimes will play. If you put it at 50, well, half of it will play half of the time. So that's the interesting part here. On top of that, you have a little information here. If you click here, you're going to open up this. Same thing if you're into this. You click on the arrow that you have here. If you click on the arrow, it will actually go into the expansion of that edit window just for the first sound. So you have this for each sound. You click here, you switch each of the sound, you have this control. So really interesting. So first of all, let's say the first one here, if you play this, so you get the first window, which is the synthesis window if you want. You've got pitch control, dynamic, how much the volume will play. You want it to be smooth. I think it's basically the curve or the way it's going to react. Attack, decay, sustain, release, so you can control some of it, but understand that it's a sample. So sometimes it doesn't work the same way, because if they recorded the sound with some ambience in the back, part of the sound, then the decay will be on the envelope. The decay and the release will be also on the reverb. So it could be weird, but there's a reverb there, so you can bring it back in after. There's a filter. By default, you don't use it if you want to use the acoustic sounds that are there, but if you want to create something, or you want to filter out some stuff, say, okay, this is going to mostly I want just for the bass, then you can cut the high frequency, because there you have a low pass, band pass, and high pass. You have a cutoff value, you've got a Q, so the resonance. There's a drive, so you can make it have the filter distort, and there's an envelope for following this. So if you use this a lot, it does not sound acoustic at all. It becomes electronic, it becomes noisy, it becomes industrial, depending on how you use it, on which sound you're using. But if you want to create these percussive sounds or industrial, like I like distortion, it's going to be a good place to be to create these more aggressive sounds, are not natural by default, because they've been filtered into a weird way if you want to. Second window, you've got the sequence, and then you have the detail of the sequence. What's interesting in the sequence, of course, you've got the many steps here, and each of them here is basically the velocity, how loud that it's played. Then you have at the bottom here all the rest of the information. So this is the division. So let's say you want this to be 2 divisions, so substeps if you want, or 3, or 4. So if you listen now to this one, so you can really create something interesting here. And you've got the pitch, so you can say, well, this one, the pitch will be actually 6. Okay, so each of the steps can have its own pitch. And after that, you've got the gate, so how long that note will be played. And because it's 4 substeps, it's going to be harder to hear, but you could say that this one's going to be shorter. This percussive sound is going to be less obvious. Then this one is skip. It's the probability of skipping that step. In this case, You go from 0 to 99%. So 99% means that 99% there's a chance that this step will be skipped. So the note will not play. And you have at the bottom suggest, clear, auto align. So it will, every time you press another key while the first one is playing, this one will follow where it is in the sequence of the first one. So basically it's going to be in time, like if you play the whole thing like this. If you play this and you add another one and you add another one, they're going to be playing and synced because they'll be in sync where it should be if they played from the start at the same speed. If you don't do that, they're basically going to be running off out of sync. They'll be in sync, but they won't start at the same place. So every time you press a key, it will start from the beginning on that key, but in sync. So that's kind of how it. So you can really create these bizarre rhythm if you want to. And suggest, you click on it, it's just going to create new stuff. So. Or you can just go in and select, I want to have a hand drum template. Here we go. And the offset can go on one side or the other side. And effects, now it becomes interesting. Now keep in mind that effects here, there's two types. There's the one that are per sound. So the four controls you have here, crusher, flanger, frequency shifter, and EQ, are available for each of the sounds separately. And at the bottom, you've got effects sent to the reverb and the delay. So reverb and delay are for all of the instruments. They're kind of global if you want. And you really have just here a amount that you can send that sound to it. So it means that basically you have reverb and delay, but it's the same reverb and delay for the whole kit of 8 different sounds, which is perfect for me. You have the crusher, so distortion, basically, and a gain out. You get a flanger that can go really frequency shifter. Okay. Let's turn these off for now. And we got an EQ also to decide what's going to be cut. Like in this, you get a boost, you get a cut, and you can say where's the frequency cutting between these two, these sections. So it's a multi-band EQ that you can control here. So really cool. And again, if you assign to the delay, you have to go into the effects, which is the global effects. And then here you can say, well, my delay is going to be well, if I want the reverb to be just on this other sound, this one here, I'm going to go here and say effects. I'm going to send the reverb to that one, but a lot of it. Go back to effects and say this one's going to be very big. I got these weird, not just effects, but device. Ah, interesting. I like that. Slap echo here. So that's the logic. You also have a drive where you can global, okay. You have a maximizer, so So if you find that your sound is too soft, you want it to be more aggressive, bring down the threshold, and you have. I've got everything else playing louder here. It's kind of weird what I did with that. And you got an EQ, which is a global EQ. So let's actually listen to some of the presets so you have an idea of what it is. I mean, and they're grouped in ways that make some sense, but if you, I don't know the differences between percussions from Africa, the Caribbean, India, and all that. I couldn't recognize that. So now, what's cool about this is when you go and you look at the bottom here, if you play with the decimate, you're changing the amount of notes playing. And it's kind of logical the way it does it. So time is still very logic. It's not just random stuff. You can create changes just by using this. Keep in mind that if you have this kind of a support to a rest of the song, you can easily just load that, have this play, and move this value here, decimate, and go from, very simple to everything goes back to play full on. You also have the steps. You can say, well, globally, I'm going to step. I'm going to bring down the steps. So it creates new rhythms. And it might be bizarre. And it goes back to the normal when you go back. So again, these are really quick way to create variation on that same already prepared beat, which is pretty cool. It means that every preset has a lot of options. Here. So you say, okay, these are all percussive sound are maybe not for everybody, because you might say, well, I don't do that. Well, I think you should think about it, because when you look at what you have, you've got process stuff, you've got modern, and it goes with create atmosphere, helping support the rest of the song itself. So hypnotic state, just for fun. So you can create these cool rhythm with that. And industrial wave. So this is more my style because that's what I do, but I understand the interest of this. But then, as I'm saying, I like the rhythm part and the kind of support that it creates to a song. And just listen to this one. So you can also go that route and create something that is more. Okay, how do you do this? Then edit, okay? And then you have, so this one here is in fuzz. So this was in fuzz because you put the effects and its maximum drive. And the sound is with no release, but if you give it some, okay, and it's only at the beginning, so you have that distortion type of sound. This one is the snare. Okay, works, but and you've got an EQ here to cut the bass and only keep kind of the snare part of it. So if you want to create something more aggressive and industrial or electronic, you could do this and, you know, program this. And then if you say, I want to keep these sounds because I made a kit that I find interesting, but I don't want to have, you know, I would like to have the other rhythm with me. Well, then you're going to go into sequence and change the sequence that you have here and create new sequence until you find something you like. So let's finish off by playing a little bit more of the presets, so a good idea of what you can do with it. That's it. The UVI Percussion Factory, different, interesting, and I think it's great to do these background sounds that support the rhythm and the lead, and also all these breaks that you can have, or intros and outros where you have these other percussion keeps the rhythm without the drum being there. It's pretty cool. And the fact that you can actually decimate the notes in real time and bring them back in creates that evolution of a single, actually it's not a single pattern, it's actually 8 patterns playing at the same time, and you can play with that. So it's pretty well thought of the way it's built, and it gives you a glimpse of what's inside Falcon, because you could create something like that yourself in Falcon and just make it into a very powerful, you know, rhythm machine if you want to. So again, it's not just a cool bank of sound, it's also education of what you can do with Falcon. That's it. Stay safe, make more music, and see you soon. Cheers.